The United States went through the Spanish-American War, realized that the Spanish 93 Mauser was superior by far to the Krag, and in a matter of three to 5 years, developed the 03 Springfield. Bingo. The English went through the same thing with the Boer War. They ran up against the 95 Mauser. They decided that that was so far superior to their Lee Medfords, they were going to go to a Mauser. But in the meantime, they worked on what's called a short magazine Lee Enfield. But they wanted a Mauser, all right? They wanted something that used a rimless cartridge. They wanted something roughly 7mm. They wanted something that did not have a box magazine hanging off the side of it. They wanted to be able to have it inside the stock, the way the Mauser is. They wanted a third locking lug, just like the Mauser, okay? So, they did their research. They designed a gun in 1913 that was a .276 caliber, rimless. Which is interesting because when John C. Garand was working on the M1, he originally made it in .276 rimless also. All right? There was a demand for a 7mm type cartridge. 1913, they develop a gun. They make 1,200 of them. They do trials. They're happy with it. 1914 rolls along. They're now involved in a war, and they go, this is not the time to change calibers. All right? So, they then put the word out, can we make the gun to take the 303? All right? But in the meantime, they had decided on a bayonet. Now, this is your bayonet for your SMLE. Nice smooth grips, nice blade. They developed what they call the P13 bayonet. It's going to be important. Same blade, same handle, but they were afraid the troops would mix up the two bayonets. So what they did is they cut grooves into the grips. So you could immediately tell whether you had a P1907 bayonet or a P13 bayonet. But there's not going to be a P13 rifle. Okay? What they are going to do is in October of 1914, like a month after the war started, or a couple months, they go, we want a P14, a pattern 1914 magazine rifle, something in .303 caliber. They first go to the manufacturers in England. Can you make these guns for us? And they go, no, not right now. They then go to Canada, and they convince the Canadian Parliament, this is the gun of the future, they tell them. This is the gun of the future, right here. We need you to make them in Canada. The Canadians go, okay. The Canadian government has already purchased the Ross Rifle Company, which has almost gone out of business. They try to get the machine tools that they need to make this rifle. Place to get them, the United States. What's the problem? They're not available. Why aren't they available? Because America is tooling up for war production for other countries. So we're not going to make these in Canada. J.P. Morgan, always out to make a big buck. He tells the British, I'm sure I can find you an American company that can make those guns. So, the gun is approved in 1914. None are made in 1915. January of 1916, they start signing U.S. contracts with estimated delivery in May of 1916. Okay? Now, they start accepting them in June 21st, 1916. Here's the problem. For early guns, they realize are not as good as they should be. So in December, they do what they call the star modification. But all the guns that are made before that are now determined to be emergency use only. And years ago, you could go to a gun show and find mint P14s. But they were all marked EY, which meant emergency use. They were the ones with the star. They really never got much use. They were beautiful, mint condition, because they didn't get used. Problem they ran into is they had to designate the gun 3 different ways. 303 pattern 1914 Mark 1E, R, and W. Why? Because they didn't have interchangeable parts. Each company made its own gauges. So all the Winchester guns had parts that were interchangeable with all the Winchester guns. All the Remington guns were interchangeable, and all the Eddystone. But you cannot put Eddystone parts into a Winchester or Remington into an Eddystone. And the British accepted that. And they're going to say, just mark the parts, ERW, you know. They, in effect, maintained 3 different types, okay? Now, what's the gun like, all right? This is your P14, okay? The big distinguishing when you're looking at these, number one is look for the brass plate, unit marking disc, I'm sorry. And the long-range sights, volley sights. Now, these were not meant for an individual sniper. The idea was you lined up your platoon or your company, the officer would tell you, set it for 2,000 yards. You would set it, you'd all kneel down, he'd tell you, all right, fire. And then you would launch all your rounds and create a beaten zone like you would with a machine gun. Now, to make sure your sling didn't get in the way of your sights, they offset the swivels. So all the swivels are offset to the right. Okay? That's so the sling will be geared more to the right rather than interfere with the operation. Alright? Now, they go into manufacture. In the meantime, in England, what have they been doing? Making SMLEs like crazy. Putting them into combat where they've worked beautifully. They are definitely equal to a Mauser. There is no problem. So in effect, by the time they make their solution, the problem has disappeared. They created a gun that they don't need. Okay? As a matter of fact, by April of 1917, they had 1.1 million P14s made. And then they made another 100,000 and sent them to India. All right? Of the total that were sent overseas, here's a nice figure, 15,000 are at the bottom of the ocean, still sitting in their crates. Okay? Now, the guns arrive, they send them to the front, they're okay, but the guys like the SMLE. Some snipers preferred this gun, they felt it was better, gave better accuracy. But the average soldier saw no need for that. They had made enough SMLEs. So what do they do? When the war is over, stick these in the warehouses. Now you got to find customers. After the war, they only found 2 countries in the whole world that wanted guns in 303 that were not members of the Commonwealth. And they are those major world powers, Estonia and Latvia. Okay? They were the only ones that wanted pattern 14 rifles. England's got cases of them. What do you do with these stupid things? They tried, one company tried to convert them to 8mm Mauser because that was a standard cartridge that most of the world wanted. Okay? So they store 700,000 of these things sitting in the warehouse, and the clouds of World War II are starting to appear. What most of us are going to end up with, if you want to get a pattern 14, is this version right here. Okay? This is known as the Weedom repair standard. What they did is they took the guns out of the warehouses and said we need to upgrade them in case we need them for the next war. First thing they did is they got rid of the brass disc and put a wood plug. Get one of these. Don't sit there with a pocket knife and try to take that out and poke them in. This is what it is. Learn to live with it. They got rid of the long-range sights, volley sights. It didn't serve a purpose. So they got rid of them. Okay? They then have a whole bunch of these rifles. Now, where are they going to use them? Well, yeah, after Dunkirk, they had a real problem. Like 1/3 of the British small arms were left in France. Okay? Not to mention a lot of other equipment. So what they start doing is the Weedom repair standard. 55% of all the P14s that were ever made went through the Weedom repair standard. All right? I've done my research with pictures. What they do with them, they use them for training. And they give them to the Home Guard. This becomes the gun of the Home Guard. At that time, they had 1 rifle for every 2 volunteers. So you got a P14, you marched around with it, you went home, you gave it to somebody else to march around with it. We don't have one for each of you. All right? But these are the ones you tend to run into. Again, the wood plug, no long-range sights. What is the importance of the P14? It's the father of the 1917. That is its real contribution. All right? Now, the United States enters the war in April 1917. How are we going to arm this multi-million-man army? All right? Now, Leonard Wood, who was one of the main advisors to the president, military advisors, his solution was, we have the factories in America that are making these things. Keep making them. Give them to our troops. We have the Savage Company. It's making Lewis guns in 303 for the British. Let's equip our soldiers overseas with P14s in 303, Lewis guns in 303. Well, that renders 650,000 03 Springfields as useless. You're going to have to get new web gear because 303 cartridges are wider with their rim. What holds 10 rounds of 30-06 will not hold 10 rounds of 303. All right? It just won't work. The other suggestion is, let's modify this gun for our service cartridge, the 30-06. And that, at the end of the war, when they went back and they said, what were some of the important decisions we made? That was one of the most important decisions was, let's go with a rifle that uses American ammunition but is based on the British rifle. All right? Now, when they decide to do that, okay? Walt, you gave me your Winchester here, right? All right. The British have been content with 3 variations of the rifle. The Eddystone, the Winchester, and the Remington. Our government goes, you better standardize all 3. We want 4 sets of gauges. One goes to Springfield Armory, one goes to Winchester, one goes to Remington, one goes to Eddystone. You're going to have complete interchangeability. None of this what you did with the British of storing parts for 3 different guns. Winchester is convinced their gauges are going to be the right ones. So they start cranking out rifles ahead of everybody else. Okay? Because they're convinced.
August 1917.
August 1917, they're going to crank out rifles. Now, we got rid of the long-range sights, but we kept the offset, the sling swivels. We kept them because we want to make as few changes as possible. All right? This is one of the early Winchester guns. It's got a star on it because they're going to cause a problem when they do standardize. They're going to try to palm these off. They're not going to work. I mean, interchangeability. Pershing's even going to send a letter back to the United States saying, don't send me any Winchesters because they're not interchangeable. In developing the gun, remember this gun started out as a rimless gun, okay, in 276. Went to a rim. So converting it back to a rimless was not a major challenge. The only thing was, you will notice the bulge in the magazine here. That's because it was designed to hold 5 rounds of 303. It holds 6 rounds of 30-06. Then came another question. If it holds 6 rounds, why not issue 6-round stripper clips? And then we get full capacity. The answer is, what do you do when the guy has a Springfield and he tries to shove 6 rounds into his magazine? So they didn't take advantage of the full capability of this gun with the 6 rounds. They standardized on the 5-round stripper clip, which meant you could still use all the web gear you had out there, all the ammunition pouches, everything else. And the 1917 is going to go into production. Now, you notice I keep calling it 1917, all right? That is going to be another fun thing you're going to discover when you research this particular gun, okay? What to call it? All right? Well, here's the fun part. Officially, it was the United States Rifle, model of 1917, but people started calling it in the books U.S. model of 1917, which is what's written on the receiver. In the manuals I got here from the First World War, it's referred to as United States Rifle, comma, caliber 30, model of 1917. Then you go inside the book and it goes U.S. model 1917, caliber 30, U.S. ammunition. On the, I have a shipping packing slip from Winchester. They called it U.S. model 1917W, caliber 30. All right. Then it was called the U.S. Rifle Caliber 30 model of 1917 in the World War II repair manuals. Okay? Another flyer that was designed to sell slings called the Enfield 1917. Then you're going to run into U.S. Rifle Caliber 30 M1917, comma, parentheses, comma, you know, Enfield. U.S. Rifle Caliber 30 M1917. And in the United Kingdom, they're going to call it the P17. The pattern 17, so it's not confused with the pattern 14. Okay? And I got Springfield. England decided to send 40,000 of these rifles to Ireland in exchange for 40,000 SMLEs, which they felt they'd have more use for. When the guns got to Ireland, the Irish started calling them Springfields. Now, in the 1960s, ye old hunter used to advertise Shamrock Enfields. You could get a 1917 Enfield with a certificate of authenticity saying that it came from Ireland. Okay? And that was your Shamrock Enfields. So, you're going through Grandpa's gun collection and you find this certificate of authenticity and the serial number matches your 17, you got that extra bonus. Now, that's all the different names for this gun, all right? Now, I talked a little bit about the bayonets. The pattern 13 bayonet, with the grooves in it, we didn't want to change things, so we left it. But at first, they were still making bayonets under the British contract. And we had to design our own scabbard. So we designed a scabbard with this kind of a device for hooking into your belt. Very weak design, they tend to break, they're no good. The bayonet itself, you come up here later, has British markings on it. It'll say 1913, that's the model. Then it has the month and the year the bayonet was made. And it's got British proof marks that are over-stamped and the letters US. We just took over the British leftover bayonets, over-stamped their markings, stamped US, and in the Army manual for the First World War, which is reprinted by U.S. Combat Bookshelf, they even tell you, they were telling soldiers then, don't worry about the markings. They were made from a foreign contract, it's a U.S. bayonet. Now, we then made the better scabbard, all right? And I'll tell you right now, the very first item I bought as a collector at age 12 was a 1917 Enfield bayonet, $2.95 plus 35 cents, postage and handling, P&S sales, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Here comes this package. I'm a 12-year-old. I open it up, boom, beautiful bayonet, scabbard, everything, okay? These things go anywhere from 150 to 200 now, okay? All right. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit with the bayonets. All right. World War II comes along, and we're using the Springfield. And we don't use leather bayonet scabbards anymore, they're no good. So we developed a scabbard for the 1905 bayonet. Somebody said, well, we need one for the 1917. And somebody was really slick and smart. They have the same body, what's changed? The throat, yeah. So all they did is they kept the same plastic part. All they did was add a longer throat, sorry, yeah, metal throat, and now you had a scabbard that could be used with a 1917, because I want to get into that, the legacy of the 1917. All right. Now, we have these guns. What are we going to do with them? Well, they're going to issue them out to the troops, and that's when problems start. Okay. A lot of Americans did not like cock-on closing. They felt it threw their aim off. The other problem they were running into is recruits kept using the wings as a front sight. Okay? The other problem was uniform. When you fired and you recoiled, you knocked over the sight. When you were wearing one of these. Okay? And of course, a lot of people just like open sights because that's what they were familiar with. The most famous being, of course, Alvin York. Alvin York did not like this gun. He preferred the old Army rifle, 1903. And the story has gone back and forth over the years. This is an old issue of American Rifleman. What we do know is his unit was equipped with 17s. He and a few others kept their 03s. Okay? So chances are he used an 03. The guys in his platoon were using 17 Enfields. Okay? The rifle does well in combat, except for one problem that starts popping up early. The ejector and the extractor. No time at all, the ejectors start breaking. This is a design fault in the gun right from the start. This little slender arm right here breaks off. I have one there in the bag. For years, I used to replace them for people in the club because it happened often enough. Okay? Happened to me a few times. It is a major design fault. Now, the Army manual in World War II showed how to fix it by using a broken one, by using a leaf spring. And then somebody else found a way that you cut a notch and you put a little coil spring. So if you ever break your 17 ejector, hang on to it. A gunsmith can fix it, put it back in the gun. Now, if you go to gun parts, they will sell you three different kinds. They will sell you an original 100-year-old part. They will sell you a reproduction of the 100-year-old part, or they will sell you one of these. Okay? And get one of those. You're going to shoot the gun a lot, really. The vintage matches. The other part that broke later on was the extractor, which is a surprise, because let's face it, extractor is a big piece of metal. Its design fault is they cut a gas vent right near the edge. Okay? And that started creating problems. So if you're going to get spare parts for your rifle, you can get extractor and either another ejector or learn how to fix it that way, or have your gunsmith fix it. Now, after the war, the question was, should we continue with this as our standard service arm or go with the 03 Springfield? The argument was the 03 is made by Rock Island, was made by Rock Island Springfield. The government controls it. These were made by private companies. We really don't like the gun that much. They're coming back from Europe in real bad shape because guys didn't clean them right. And in effect, Springfield Arsenal said, if we don't clean, lubricate, and put these guns away, they're going to be useless. So they start cleaning, lubricating, cosmolining, putting them away. All right? Well, now that you put them away, what are you going to use them for? They really have no use for them. So they're going to sit there in the warehouse till the 1930s. And here's the story, okay? We're going to start out with how many they made. You can see it's close to 2 million. All right? The gun was considered war reserve. In other words, we're going to keep it in case there's a war, then we'll pull it out. It will be what we call a limited standard. In other words, if I can't get you an 03 or an M1, I might get you a 17. All right? The first attempt to get rid of these is going to be the Philippine Commonwealth Army. All right? We're creating an army in the Philippines, so when we leave on July 4th, 1946, they can defend themselves. And what a wonderful opportunity to get rid of guns we no longer want. So we start sending them over. They were going to send over 300,000, 360,000. They sent over 220,000. And they realized it's not a good gun for people of short stature. 2, ejectors and extractors keep breaking. One of the sad things was when the Japanese invaded the Philippines and the Philippine Commonwealth Army had to take them on, some of the soldiers had to carry thin strips of bamboo. So when they fired their rifle, they could then stick it down the barrel and poke the cartridge out. Pull it out again. That's if the extractor was broken. If the ejector wasn't broken, you had a short piece of bamboo, and you burnt your fingers pulling out the cartridge. Okay? It was not a good gun for that purpose. But it was, first they were selling it to the Commonwealth, then they were giving it to the Commonwealth. All right? The next big use, British purchase. 500,000. We're getting rid of them. Britain wanted guns, any guns. It shoots good. This is, of course, after Dunkirk. So 500,000 of our Enfields are sent over there. Now, when they sent them over, so they wouldn't get confused with the identical P14, they would paint a red strip and put 300 on it to indicate it's not a 303. This gun here probably had it. It's got British proof marks. When these guns came back to the United States, a lot of people just get out the paint remover and eliminate it. Therefore, if you can find one that still has the marking, you've got an ideal collector item. Now, some of you are going, I know where his hardware is. Number one, they're not going to sell you lead paint. Number 2, you got to get the right shade of red. And 3, because of the cosmoline and the linseed oil, the paint started flaking off right away anyway. So to get that flaking off look and everything else, you're going to run into a problem. If you do run into them, and I've seen a few, sometimes they don't seem to match up, top and the bottom. The reason is, when they were put on when the gun was still together. Before the gun was sent to the United States, they took off the handguard, proof tested it, stamped it, grabbed it apart, put it back on another handguard, and they don't always line up.
I have one that has, it looks like orange right now.
Yeah.
Not even red anymore.
Yeah, if I had my old 48 set of Crayola crayons, I might be able to figure out what shade of red it is. But a lot of them, you can't make it out. You're not going to fake it. All right? Now, we're then going to lend lease them to the British. Okay? 119,000 go to the United Kingdom. 80,000 go to Canada. Now, the Canadian ones, Angus gave me a stock from one. It's a regular 1917, but you'll get a small C and a broad arrow in the stock. And that's not the only indicator that it was a Canadian 1917, okay? Now, China gets 152,000 of them, all right? Yesterday I was doing some more research and I looked up General Stilwell in the Chinese Army in India. And that's where my father served, China, Burma, India. My father was an instructor to the Chinese on the 1917 water-cooled machine gun. And sure enough, there's a scene there of a Chinese soldier taking apart a Browning 1917. And then the other scenes are soldiers, and they're all carrying 17s. They're being trained in India. They're going to go into combat in the Burma theater against the Japanese. And the Chinese have these. Now, due to the recent election of President Trump, for those of you who don't remember, we used to get a lot of neat stuff from China. And then Clinton, to punish them for selling missiles to Iran, forbade the importation of Chinese guns and ammunition by executive order. Okay? He also convinced the Russians not to send us any semi-automatic firearms by voluntary restraint and executive order. January 20th, that afternoon, every one of those can be handed by the Trump's signature. You can simply go, these executive orders are invalid. All executive orders are only valid during the term of the president who signed them. And most presidents, the tradition is, when they come in, they reauthorize all existing executive orders. They don't have to. Okay? So he might be able to just let it go, poof. Or he could say, erase this one, erase this one, erase this one. So for those of you who are waiting for all those South Korean M1 Grands, carbines, and 45s, maybe. All right? So China gets a lot of our guns, probably still has them, our allies. Now, the gun gets declared a substitute standard, all right? And when I was stationed at Fort Hood, there were pictures of soldiers at Fort Hood, 1942, 43, running around with 17 Enfields, okay? Now, a lot of these are going to be counted twice, because they're going to be in one place, and they're going to be given sent to somewhere else. All right, so at the start of the war, zone of the interior, 213,000. For all you civilians out there, zone of the interior is a fancy word for continental United States. CONUS. There was a zone of the interior and the zone of operations. Zone of the interior is where we train, manufacture, recruit, build, and zone of operations is where you go and kill people. Okay. So zone of the interior, 213,017 were put to use. The OSS got 54,000. The closest they got to combat with American troops was North Africa. Some of the support troops were equipped with 17s. I remember seeing pictures, I think it was like the rear echelon engineers or artillery. Some of them are lugging 17 Enfields. Later on, you see pictures of Moroccans in their burnouses working with the French in Italy, and they're carrying 17s. So they might have just handed them over, okay? 1946, it's going to be declared obsolete. Now, these terms, okay, limited standard means, yes?
I read that there would be some of the Foreign Legion.
Foreign Legion, yeah, our French allies, right? Free French got them. Some were parachuted in by OSS. Others were given to the French Army. Although they tried to equip the French with M1 Grands also. And there's a recent movie that was made in either in France or Algeria combined that deals with Algerians fighting for France in the Second World War at the end. And they're all wearing M1 helmets and M1 Grands because that's what they were issued. You know, you were trying to use their troops too. So you re-equip them. When you look at the pictures of the Chinese, some of them are wearing flat helmets, either Brodie's, British, or 17 Kellys. I don't know what. But later on, you see them, they're all wearing the U.S. steel pot. But they're carrying 17 Enfields. All right? Now, during the war, you got to recondition, yes?
All those allies and all the people they gave those 1970s to, they all had that problem with the extractor.
Oh, yeah. It's a design fault. It's
How did they all deal with it?
the same way we had to deal with it, you know, carry little bits of bamboo, carry a lot of spare parts. Now, give you an example. No, you can't have it, guys. Ejector for U.S. rifle, caliber 30, model 1917 Eddystone. And this is packed February 1st, 1919 by the Midfield Steel Ordnance Company. And there are 10 ejectors in here. And when they sent the guns to the Philippines, they sent them boxes and boxes of ejectors and extractors. They sort of knew that was the, that was going to be the problem, and it was. Now, the war comes along. When a gun is obsolete, what it means is we're not buying anymore, we're not fixing them. We're not keeping spare parts for them. When they come into the warehouse, But during the war, the gun was limited standard, so you had to repair and replace. Now, walnut stocks were the way they were made in the First World War. Blued finish. Some were Parkerized, some were blued. This is an example. I remember seeing lots of these. I bought this here at a meeting years and years ago. During the war, if they needed to recondition the gun, they Parkerized it gray and they gave it a beach stock. And the stocks, because of the cosmoline and the aging, they tend to have this lighter color. But they put beach stocks on them, they Parkerized them. Now, a lot of the barrels were messed up. And one of these guns has a Johnson Arms barrel, and I have an extra high standard barrel at home. And they would just, the original barrels were made with British specifications, 5 groove, okay? The Americans kept the 5 groove. When it came time in World War II to rebarrel them, they had Johnson Arms make 4 groove barrels, no, 2 groove, and high standard made 4. So they rebarreled them. After the war, they sold them off to the CMP, DCM in those days, off to the civilians. People would take these guns because they're over-engineered and convert them to bigger calibers. And they had the gun polished and blued. And when the gun came back, they found cracks in the receivers. Not good. And for a while, they wouldn't sell any Eddystones that were rebarreled. For some reason, the way Eddystone torqued its barrels, when you unscrewed it, you tended to crack the receiver a lot of times. So, I know some of you have been using them and doing well. Now, some were Remington and Winchester, but generally, Eddystones that have a JA or a high standard barrel, that appeared to, the problem appeared more often in that mix. I have here a Winchester with Johnson Arms barrel. I know Jay outshoots everybody with his Johnson Arms Eddystone. Okay? But given a choice, there's 2 guns for sale at the gun show. Okay? If it's JA or HS, try to get the one with the original barrel. Be marked E, W, or R in the month of manufacture. All right? What was the legacy of the 17? Okay? Now that's an interesting point because during that war, they had to develop a riot gun, and Winchester was making 17s. They were making the pattern 13 bayonet, which became the pattern 1917 bayonet. So they continued to make shotguns that took that bayonet. And as late as the 1970s, my MP company, we had these bayonets. Now they ran out of 17 bayonets, so they had new ones made in Canada and some other place. That was the legacy of the 17. It continued to live on in the riot guns. Now you'd think somebody would have realized, just design a new handguard that makes regular M16 bayonets. But they didn't. And they, for a long time, they had to make these bayonets. Now over here, I have what our wonderful government did with a lot of them. I guess somebody was afraid of drive-by bayonetings, okay?
That's the favorite weapon of drug dealers.
Drug dealers, yes. You can store so much cocaine on these things, man. It's fantastic. That blood groove will fill you, get you going all week, okay?
The lines you can make.
The lines, I mean, really go good. Just so you guys know, and Jason's back there, the wonderful firm of Sarko in New Jersey, which is where I got this, used to take these, take 1907 bayonets, and through judicious use, manufacture what appeared to be a U.S. Vietnam era bayonet. They just didn't fit right. Okay? You try to put them on, it's just too much back in here. Okay? But they would take the grips and the cross piece and create a bayonet of the war pattern type. Now, accessories for this gun. They wanted to limit accessories. That's why they stuck to the 5-shot stripper clip so you can still use the pouches. They created a breech cover, and it's made so it fits over the rear sight, and it can be used on an 03 Springfield. They used the oiler from the 03 Springfield. That was kept. They only had to create one additional weird part, and that is the magazine depressor, which is a neat accessory. That's this thing here, little sheet metal. The reason is when you do the manual of arms, let's see if I can do it with one of these.
Stan,
Yeah.
like why?
Oh, okay. When you do the manual of arms with the 03 Springfield, you have the magazine cut off on, you know, and you got the bolt closed. Inspection, pumps! He hands it over to the guy. Trouble is, he hands it back. Follower goes up. Doesn't look cool. Matter of fact, Saturday I'm going to be at drill competition in Union City. They have 03 Springfield dummy guns, and they do inspection arms. What you do is you put this piece in, and it depresses the follower so you can close the bolt real fast, snappy, everything else. What if you didn't have one of those?
A nickel.
A nickel. You shove the nickel in there. So they probably designed a $10 piece for you. You could have used a nickel. But anyway, that's about the only, one of the only accessories that you need that's unique to the 17 Enfield. Now the sling that's on here, commonly it's a Kerr sling. What happened was the Kerr sling was designed to be used on almost any gun. It doesn't really fit well on an 03 Springfield, but it fits well on a 17 and on a Mosin. And the company that made it used to always give you this little flyer when you want to sling. And they always show you putting it on a 17. So, shall we say, the gun show legend is that this is the only appropriate sling when you have a 17 Enfield. No. They use the leather ones, yeah.
That book you have, that green book?
Yes.
If you look at the pictures of the doughboys in there,
Yeah.
they got leather slings on there.
Yeah, almost, the 1907 leather, I think 1907?
Yeah.
Leather sling was the standard sling. On my P14s, I have leather slings. They were considered an appropriate sling for them, but they also used the plain British web sling, the SMLEs. But the Kerr Adjustable Strap Company, New York City. Now, materials. I'm going to tell you right now, you're only going to buy one book, this is the one. United States Rifle Model 1917 CS Ferris. This will give you so much good information about some other books that have been around for a while. Ian Scatterton, the U.S. Enfield. It's expensive. It's more from the British point of view. It just has a lot of pictures of how the gun, you know, tool rooms and experimentals and things like that. They even try to make a Pedersen device for the gun. Yeah, it's an okay book. This is a base shop data book, repair book from Rock Island Arsenal. When people talk about the accuracy of a 17, most of your NRA vintage matches are seeing 17s predominate. Now, the target shooters were one of the groups that killed this gun from becoming the standard issue, because it has no ability for windage. When they left the factory, the front sights were staked, and it worked. But when they went for repair, they just took the sight off, shoved the other one back in again. So if your 17 is not on target for windage, chances are the sight was moved during repair, replacement, or whatever. The beam sight is better than the 03. So it was a better battle sight. It's better protected here and here, the wings. All right? It's got a 5-groove barrel as standard. It's got a lot of advantages if you're doing vintage rifle shooting. In the contest where you have your choice, I noticed the NRA standings, you see a lot of 17s. They seem to be the popular gun for that. All right? So the war ends. When you come up here later, this is your soldier's handbook for the model of 1917, from World War I, 1918. Okay, it gives you all the information, all the stances, things like that. This one here, P17, the American Enfield. Good booklet for drawings because they show you in detail every single part. And again, a useful guide that you stick it in your pocket. Try and get anything else. This is another good book. It's called, for collectors only, British Enfield Rifles, Volume 4, Pattern 1914, and the U.S. Model 1917 by Charles Stratton, North Cape Publications. But again, you're only going to buy one book, get this one. All right? My topic is American Enfield. Well, there's some more American Enfields. When World War II came along, Britain needed more rifles. They first went to Remington, and they were going to make 03 Springfields and 303 British. They got the machinery from Rock Island, and they're doing all kinds of experiments on how to modify them. When Uncle Sam said, we need them to make 03 Springfields again for the U.S. and the Marine Corps, fought Guadalcanal with 03 Springfields. We still need 03s. Sorry, Brits, you're out of luck. So they then went to Canada, and they went to Savage, and said, can you make number 4 Enfields for us? And both of them said they could. Now, this is a Savage. There's some nicer ones out there. I even have a nicer one at home. I couldn't bring everything. It's a good number 4. What happened was the British inspectors kept turning them down for different things, because they were paying for it. Then they were told, shut your mouth, we're paying for it. Lease. And we're telling you they're good enough. But every one of them that we said was good enough that we're giving you was marked on U.S. property. And that's what you'll run into like this. They go, U.S. property. In theory, we lent these to the Brits. And after the war, they were supposed to send them back to us. As if we needed number 4 Enfields and 303 or anything, right? Come on. It was, you know, legalistic mumbo jumbo. We're loaning you these rifles. There are rifles, but you can have them for a while. Now, the way the American guns, Savage and Long Branch, I'm going to get into, differ from the British issue is we simplified the bolt release. British ones have a little spring and a catch. You got to machine all this fancy cut. All they did was they cut a notch into the receiver. You line up the notch, the bolt head comes back. It comes right out. Nice, simple, less machining, easy to make. Canada, Long Branch did it, we did it. In England, they continued to make it the complicated way, and did after the war also. But that's the major difference. It's a very simple mechanism for removing the bolt and putting it back in again. Savage, U.S. made, United States property. Now, Canada had the Long Branch arsenal. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is a Long Branch. Given a choice between number 4 Enfields, get a Long Branch. They are finely made. As a matter of fact, the British mentioned how finely made the Long Branch guns were compared to the ones being made in England. Of course, there's a reason why they were better made in Canada. Anybody know what it is? It was out of the range of the Luftwaffe. Okay. The workers didn't go home and wonder if the house is still standing. They didn't wonder if their family's going to be blown to bits. And they made quality number 4 Enfields. This particular one is an FTR 1948. That means factory thorough repair. Now, they made them during the war, most of the war, with 2-groove barrels. Because they British decided that's good enough. Near the end of the war, the Canadians said, how would you like 5-groove barrels? Why? Because we make Bren guns with 5-groove barrels, and we finished the contract with Bren guns. We have our machinery set up to make 5-groove barrels. Okay, this particular gun has a 5-groove barrel. It's been factory thorough repaired. It's got nice sights. It's good shooting. So when you're looking for number 4s, Long Branch is nice. You can get one of the later ones. This one's 1945, rebuilt in 48. You know, consider that as a possibility. The Savage are always popular because they're United States property. That's just the, you know, that's the selling point.
You gave me that 2-minute shooting.
Oh, the Man Minute?
No.
The Man? What?
Not because of the cutoff in the, yeah. I have a Savage, it's got a cutoff in there.
Now it's going to fight me today for some reason. This is my number 4, which usually works. Oh, I see what the problem is.
You got that cutoff in there, so the bolt. You can't do the Man Minute with it.
I don't know why it's hanging up on me today. All right. The Man Minute is actually a British training. It was part of their. It was actual drill. The Man Minute was part of their drill. Yeah, I'm going to do a real. I don't know why that's hanging up today. Maybe I had the safety on or something. But the way you did it was you manipulated the bolt, and as you brought your finger down, you hit the trigger. And it was designed to give you rapid fire close up, not accuracy. What we used to call in the military final protective fire. Dukes in the wire.
Yeah, but then the American rifle, they have to cut in the slide in there,
Uh-huh.
and the bolt will pop out.
The bolt will pop out if it's out of its groove.
Right. The British gun didn't have.
No, British gun won't do that because of the spring catcher. There's no way a bolt's going to fly out unless you manually depress it and take it out. Are there any questions on the 17? Yeah.
Of those two, the Mercury Savage and the Long Branch,
Yeah.
what are guns?
They're both, you know, well, if I can get a Long Branch with a 6-groove barrel, I would take it. Now, the British thought they were pretty good, and they would make a lot of the Savage into sniper rifles. For whatever reason, when they tested them, they felt a Savage sniper rifle goes for a premium. People felt that they were hand-selected and made into the, was it number 14 model. The Savage and the Long Branch are both Mark IV Star, with the easier bolt release. So they gave it their own designation. Yes?
Then I have a Savage over here that has the Savage bayonet. It also has the Savage front sight adjusting tool and the Savage breech cover for 1942.
Right. I forgot to bring my Savage bayonet. They're the same thing. It's a squared off S.
Square S, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether Long Branch made bayonets or not, but it's a spike bayonet. It's called 10-peg bayonet.
Yeah, and then I want to have like a knife.
Yeah.
Savage too, and the breech cover for Savage inside.
We'll have to make sure everybody gets a good look at that one then. Yeah. Yes.
So you fitted with the Patterson device?
Yes. There was a 17 that was designed to be fitted with a Pedersen device. It was one of the experimental ones. They actually did a Pedersen device for the Mosin Nagant also. But they're, you know, tool room prototypes, you know, and you and I aren't going to find one. But there was a 17 that had the cutout and everything else.
Somewhere along the line, I've seen pictures of several 1917s that had the cutout on the side.
Now, the 17, somebody else one time told me that he lined them up in the rifle rack and went over, and all of a sudden he noticed there was a difference. That they somehow made the stocks in a couple different sizes. But the distance from the swivel to the front was the same in all of them. Okay? They machine made them a 1/4 inch shorter or 1/4 inch longer. There are long and short stocks on the 17s. And they're not marked in any way. You almost have to, stick the gun in the rack and go, why is this one sticking up a little higher or a little lower? Mine are all the same size, so it's never been an issue. But I did see one time at Palmer, one person had the short stock for sale by itself for a 17. The CMP sold a lot of them. Raritan Arsenal was a place where they did a lot of work, because I remember Mark Aziz, who used to be president of this club, ran Rutgers Gun and Boat Center. One time he took me in the back room, and he had a whole bunch of beach stocks. He said he got from Remington Arsenal when they were closing down. Okay. Anybody else questions, comments, additions, omissions, corrections?
Quick comment.
Yeah.
At the end of Animal House, when there's the showdown between Niedermeyer and Flounder, Niedermeyer has a P17.
I'll tell you right now,
That's
the best movie I've ever seen where they use P17s is The Lost Battalion.
Great movie, great movie.
And they got a show. They've got 17 Enfields, but if you look at the 17 Enfields, beach stocks,
Hey, you remember that movie, The Sandpit?
the sand pebbles.
That's what they had, 17.
I didn't realize that. I just remember the BAR.
I thought you had those three.
I thought they had O3s also, but... Okay, thank you very much. All right. Come up here, ask any other questions, or look at things. People tell me there's nothing else going on in January.